Rise and shine, everybody, on Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed. So that's how it happens if you just get to catch it. The hustle and bustle, not as much as it is in Lagos, but all the same, lovely scenario this morning in the city of Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Yeah, that's what we go through. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. What a way to show you how it happens. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Well, time lapse. It's cold. 28 degrees here in the Federal Capital Territory this morning. It started really mildly. We hope that the sun will be kinder during the day, maybe with a bit of cloud covering. I mean, the heat has not been very kind in recent times.
I know.
Good morning and welcome. Hope you're staying hydrated. I'm Mao Yusuf. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
And here in Lagos, no, I'm not going to give you any time lapse. This is the way it is, human time level, okay? And not that time machine, the AI that Abuja folks are using on you. This is the National Theatre, the iconic National Theatre that hosted the world here at the second Festival of Black Arts here in Nigeria. That is the iconic monument that was used for that. And look at that beautiful skyline of Lagos at 27 degrees right now, humidity something in the region of 90% as at this time this morning in Lagos. I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Well, today in Abuja, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, I know it's been a while that any activity of note, but they are not happy. And so they plan to talk to the press much later, or talk to the government, if I could say that today, because they are saying, look, the Joint Action Committee of SANU actually and the Non-Academic Staff Union, they are saying, look, those salaries that were seized by the former administration of President Muhammadu Buhari during their strike in 2022, some have been left out of the payment. They think some unions have been, they met up with the agreement of some unions, but having spoken to the Chief of Staff, February 13, Minister of Education, the letter they wrote to them about the outstanding 4-month salaries, nothing is happening, so they are planning to call their attention. Say, look, I hope you haven't forgotten this, because the consequences, of course, you know, threatening to go on strike, which is not what anyone wants at this point in time. So we'll bring you up to speed when that does come through.
Indeed, Chamberlain, what's sauce for goose should be sauce for gander. It's really, I mean, the federal government decided to soften. Don't forget that I think the policy is supposed to be no work, no pay. If you're on strike, you don't get paid. But somehow the Tinubu administration decided to soften the stance with ASU and paid them 4 months out of the 8 months they were on strike. If the same scenario was for SANU, where they were also on strike for that long, and you didn't think to extend the olive branch to them, then SANU definitely has a point. Ayo.
Well, this morning we are still talking business because that's where all of the money is going to come from. And guess what? The business this morning is very much interested in how we shield the real sector from rate hikes in Nigeria. That's what you'll be talking about largely on Business Morning at 10 o'clock on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Yeah, we'll bring you that much later. But over the weekend in Abuja, some warehouses, initially many thought it was NEMA warehouse, but NEMA eventually spoke up and said, no, it's not ours. But residents went out on a rampage and looted the government warehouse. And so the images you see, the aftermath of that looting, where security agencies eventually arrived there. But the message is clear. It's out there. Something needs to be done. And so a lot of these young people just going about saying, listen, they are hungry. We've seen it in some states. And so here, I thought that when that did happen, many would have gotten the message and began strategizing. But we also do remember that The Minister of Agric had said that they were waiting on NEMA and some other agencies in terms of how they were going to distribute the grains that the government had said they were going to release. But we checked and found out that NEMA had done some work. I think they have sent it back to the Ministry of Agric, and they're waiting on the Ministry of Agric to release some of these items to them, such that in turn they can go ahead and distribute. But that hasn't happened as of yet. So those images you see there, when soldiers eventually caught up, arrested some of the persons who were looting the government warehouse, which NEMA said, look, our hands are up in the air, it's not us. So the people say, we're hungry.
They looted and stripped it, Chamberlain. They looted, I mean, if you're hungry, roofing sheets, is it a part of food? I mean, do you eat roofing sheets as well? Or do you eat the doors and the windows to the place? Take a look at that.
You know, reason flies out of the window when there's this mob action. It's always the case. It is always the case. So trying to prevent it is always the first step. But unfortunately, this is what it's turned out to. So when are we going to get to that point? I know in school those days, they always told, when we protested, they vandalized things and then they send us all home. Much later, we got a little smarter and thought, okay, look, some people now thought intellectual aluta was the way to go. Of course, all of those young people had a lot of energy, always said, no, what does that mean? But it's a tertiary institution, so you should be able to, ideas have to contend, and the superior ones have the day. That because you're supposed to transit from there to society. So if they go to society with that kind of mob mentality, these are the kind of things you see.
Well, this is society, and not everybody here is an intellectual. Oftentimes what people are thinking of is your stomach. But even at that, I mean, it is greed that makes you want to outsmart your fellow brothers and sisters, because truth is, not a lot of people, I mean, a number of people participated in this, but not the entire community. Chances are that you will even have people in the community saying, this is not the way to go. If these things are meant for the benefit of the entirety of the community, then it is very selfish of some individuals to try and get there, a number of them taking more than they would have gotten, you know, or even taking it and going to go and resell in the name that, oh, we are hungry. I mean, this is certainly not acceptable behavior. It is not behavior we should encourage in the name of hunger. But of course, I think it also tells the government that, look, you need to step up. You need to increase the level or the speed with which you are attending to the immediate needs of the people. If there is hunger in the land, and there is hunger in the land, then we must find ways, creative and proactive ways of addressing the needs of the people that doesn't push people who would not ordinarily do this sort of thing to doing it. But even at that, this is no excuse for the kind of behavior that we're beginning to see. This is deviant behavior, Chairman.
You know, part of what gladdened my heart when the interview we had last week with Professor Barton Naji about that power initiative, the IPP, the first of its kind here, because it could supply directly to homes, bridging the gap between generation, distribution, and transmission. It just says one thing we also need to do is the states.
Interestingly, this warehouse belongs to the FCT administration. It belongs to the FCT Agricultural and Rural Development Secretariat. That's a body that actually owns this particular warehouse. So if they had food stored there, perhaps to distribute to people who, you know, were indigent in the state and in the FCT and needed help, and then some people have gone there to loot it before the distribution. I mean, how is that helpful to everybody at the end of the day?
So, Ministry of Agric, they have some explanation to be doing to the people, because much as the directive has come from the president, the ministers themselves, the states, all hands have to be on deck to make sure that the people of this country don't get the short end of the stick. Ayo.
Well, I agree with you on that, Tim Chamberlain, and you know I cannot but also agree with Markwe in the fact that we as a people, we have our own role in all of this conversation that about making Nigeria a better place and all of that. But I'm not sure that we have quite learned, or we do learn from history at all. Remember what happened during COVID, when people looted all kinds of warehouses all over the place. One of the questions, and I'm glad you mentioned, Chamberlain, that the Ministry of the Department of Agriculture at the FCT has some explaining to do. For how long has this warehouse been there? What exactly is responsible for the delay in distributing to the people who government at that level knows that needs these things? And why has it taken, what mechanics need to go into distributing the palliatives, so to speak, to people? Are they raw palliatives that are supposed to be farmed, or are they things that are supposed to be distributed to people? And yes, Papa, you are correct. People looted. They literally looted. They didn't just raid. They literally looted. And thankfully, some of them have been arrested, as we've seen in the footages. But have we learned from history? Didn't we know that such a thing could happen if there is unnecessary delay? We have heard that such similar things are happening in various other parts of Nigeria. People are hungry, there is no doubt about it. How quickly are we responding to the needs of our people that arise on a daily basis? And perhaps another way of calling on all federal, state, local government, including private sector operators, to venture into this particular situation, because people are indeed hungry. You have no idea the kind of things people are going through. However, it doesn't excuse bad behavior. Those caught should face the law. But I pray that this will be some signature to government at various levels. Remember Chamberlain and Mark, we were talking about with Professor Heredia last week, and he was repeating the need for government to communicate, not just push out information, but communicate with the people until they own the narrative that government has. I think that's the least that we can do to calm tension and calm nerves. It's back to you.
Just to add also, we understand that 2 security operatives were caught amongst those looting these warehouses. It's really shameful and disgraceful, because that also speaks to the fact that maybe it wasn't all primarily hunger. Sometimes greed can also push people. I think that those security operatives should be singled out and made an exemplary scapegoat of. If they're 7 people caught and 2 of them, or 6 people caught and 2 of them are security operatives, the sentence or the punishment given to the security operatives should be steeper than that given to ordinary Nigerians, because they are supposed to be helping to uphold the law. But when they degenerate into a level where they are stealing, I think the last time we saw it also with the NSAS protest, where some NSCDOC officials were caught, joining the mob to loot, and they were doing it in their uniforms. It was just embarrassing. I sincerely hope that those security operatives who are mentioned and caught should be made an example of, so that this sort of thing, we're a nation of laws. If you want to misbehave and you want to show that you do not believe or you do not subscribe to discipline, even as a security operative, then I think that the state too should be clear in terms of how it intends to treat people like that who are showing deviant behavior instead of an example. You're still shaking your head? You can't believe it.
It's crazy, man. All right, let's go ahead and take you through the dailies this morning. We'll start with leadership newspaper this morning. Hardship, shun politics, address current hunger. CSOs tell president. Residents loot warehouse in Abuja. Police arrest 15 suspects. Hunger, cumulative effects of the past. Umahi. Customs probe stampede at rice distribution center. Look. Okay, we'll come to this, hopefully. But that's leadership this morning.
The Abuja Inquirer, they have this one, echoes of NSAS. That's it, how they're choosing to couch it. Abuja warehouse looting. Panic grips business owners. NEMA beefs security around warehouses nationwide. I think that's beef up. NEMA beefs up security around warehouses nationwide. That's the lead story on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer. They're celebrating 20 years. Congratulations to them.
Time flies.
Indeed, time flies. But the time now is for the Nigerian Observer. Time to look at that one and look at what you have on the front page of the Nigerian Observer. Investors respond to rate hike as equities shed 2 trillion naira in 5 days. What does that mean? Well, I'm almost certain you're going to get more of this at 10 o'clock during Business News on Sunrise Daily. But that's the lead story of the Nigerian Observer today.
Have a look at The Guardian. The theme is Nigeria's terrorism index. Terror attacks decline amid new recruitments, rise in violent conflicts. Okay, so what? Is it good or bad? Or both?
Yeah.
Good or both? So
yes, it's good to see that terror attacks are declining. It's just that for how long? Because when you read the rest of the story, amid new recruitments, rise in violent conflicts, is that really a decline?
Oh, that's the thing. We need to
Interrogate.
focus on that a little bit more. But there's a little bit of this piece here: hardship, military, paramilitary to distribute food as hoodlums loot warehouses. That's The Guardian.
Daily Trust has this: residents loot Abuja warehouses, steal foodstuff, roofing shits. So it's not all about the hunger. NEMA beefs up security at own facilities nationwide. Express your feelings responsibly, Shatima urges citizens. Address hunger, poverty, insecurity, Jibwis tells government. Or just in case you're wondering what the acronym stands for, you might need to pick up a copy of Daily Trust to see what they're talking about. But this also sticks out there. Tinubu to investors, report any official who demands bribe. That's the lead story on the front page of Daily Trust, is right there as well. What are you taking off your glasses for, Chamberlain? Let's leave it there for the paper, Ayo.
Why are you calling Chamberlain out this morning, Baokwe? Lead story of the Daily Independent this morning is a little concerning. Daily Independent has that one on your screen right now. Tech glitch, manpower shortage, delay banks linking NIN to accounts. What does that mean? Well, I'm sure you're very curious. The story is on the front page, continues on the inside pages. As well as that one below the picture, Ethiopian Airlines acquired 3 aircraft for Nigeria Air project. Carrier says it acted in accordance with Nigerian laws. Find out who made that statement on the front page, and it continues on the inside pages of the Daily Independent today.
Okay, I'm wondering what's going on with Ethiopia. Okay, well, I don't know.
There's an ongoing investigation, don't forget. So they most likely must be responding to investigations.
They're going on to acquire more planes. Is that what I heard? All right.
They acquired.
Oh, acquired.
Yes.
Not acquire, oh, pardon me. Look at Tribune. Residents loot warehouse in Abuja, steal food items, vandalize building belongs to FCT Agri Department. Police arrest 15 suspects, recover 26 bags of maize. And, you know, lots of people, including some media has said it. Wrong reporting actually means we need to look inwards and ensure that you get it right. Nigeria, Qatar sign agreements on education, investment, others. So that is Tribune today.
Vanguard Newspapers has this: federal government fights inflation, mops up 5 trillion naira. That's the lead story on the front page of Vanguard Newspapers. To raise interest rates, reprice fixed income yields. CBN meets foreign investors over FX reforms. NPR hike. Says there will be free entry, free exit. So stories on page 19 of the paper. And just sticking out also is this story: only implementation of agreement will stop nationwide strike, NLC insists. That story is right there on the front page. Your Mr. and Mrs. is also making it this morning. It's right there on the front page of Vanguard Newspapers. I don't know whether the rains have come in your own area, but find out what Mr. is doing with the bucket when you pick up a copy of Vanguard Newspapers this morning.
And look at what the Blueprint newspaper is reporting this morning. The Blueprint newspaper is certainly interested in something that you have right there, a bit of concern. Rising cost of living, consequences of our past. That's according to the Vice President. Details you'll find on the front page. Assures FG will fix nation's economy the Nigerian ways. Does that mean? Check the details. Urges responsible protest. Says missed opportunities led us to where we are. NEMA orders protection of warehouses. Please confirm looting in Abuja. And not just that, more details The details you'll find on the front page and the rest of it on page 8 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
I mean, we already highlighted a number of things about the looting. So, but that bit, Nigeria, Qatar, is of interest. And so when the president this year reports anybody who, asks for bribe, okay, we can only wait. And I'm not sure with bated breath, but be optimistic about ensuring that they do the right things, the MDs, because there's a huge narrative. I could go ahead and talk about the former administration in terms of, the pressure they had about fight against corruption and how I was in one particular ministry and then stepping out. I couldn't believe it. So it's an important narrative, and I hope that that comments from him, his lieutenants also will ensure that they're on the same page with him and not cover anybody else, because businesses, not just foreign investment, local businesses are being frustrated, to put it mildly, with those kinds of actions. People demanding stuff from businesses who are equally struggling. So, but that alone is a huge matter, so I can't say much, but I hope that something is done about that.
Oh, well, very little to comment on, which would not be getting into our conversation this morning.
Yeah, so we'll hold on for that one. All right, then. So we'll be back in just a moment. Don't worry, you join us when we'll come back in just a moment as well. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, Mr. Babatunde Ogala joins us now. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria and a member of the Board of Trustees of APC Professionals Forum. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let's start off on a general note. I mean, just looking through how different people are responding to the policies of the government and trying to see if the authorities get things right. And you read a lot of these comments as well, and you hear them too. So what would your impression be about how the assessment of how things are turning out so far?
For me, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, I'm a party man, like you possibly know, a president's lawyer, like you possibly know, but first and foremost, I am a Nigerian. And I will speak as a Nigerian, and I want to be perceived as such. I'm not unconscious of the fact that Nigerians are generally in a hurry. I'm not unconscious of the fact that the country has been in dire straits for some decades, and it has continuously deteriorated. But one thing we must give to this administration, and most especially the president, is a passion to make that change. Is a passion to put us back on the right course. Is that passion and the willingness to take bold decisions. And what was a bold decision? First, we had to address the issue of the subsidy, which everybody, and I say this, all presidential aspirants across party lines recognize that it had to go. We also must look at what they have done with the Naira. Over time, we've all noticed, and we all know what they call arbitrage. We all know what they call brokerage. We all know what they call manipulating the Naira. Recently, I heard ways and means that we're just printing Naira and what have you. I'm not one to condemn the immediate past administration, because even the president himself had said during the campaigns that I'm going to move with the assets and liabilities of that administration. But that administration, of course, may have made some mistakes. And one of which is the management of the economy. This president has put policies in place, has made statements, and then we all see what he's been doing with the diplomatic shuttles. Some will say, oh, he's always on the road, he's in Qatar today. He's not going there to play. And even if you are going to play, who can travel for 2-3 days and say he's playing, travel 8 hours on, 8 hours back, and you are back in 3 days, and you imagine that man is having fun. That is no fun. That is torture. But that is working for the country. So what has the diplomatic shuttles, what has it achieved? We need to start looking at that. Yes, people will say, oh, foreign investors, what are the results? It's been in office for only 8 months. It's going to be 9, perhaps in a couple of weeks. It will be 9 months, 9 months or 10 months in office in a couple of weeks. So when we want to assess, look at the monetary policy that is being put in place today. I understand that the foreign reserve at some point was as low as $3 billion. That, of course, you cannot do international business. Naturally, you have dollar scarcity. Nobody wants to do business with you because the foreign reserve that is used to guarantee your foreign trade that instills confidence in those who want to do business with you. Last weekend, I think on Friday, I hear from $3 billion. It has now gone as far as, I think, $34 billion. That is where the foreign. This is a quantum leap. This is some achievement. How has it managed the public outcry? Other than the NLC strike and what have you, even the ASU, there has been some stability in the education sector. Only this morning, on your news while I was waiting, I hear SANU is also saying, oh, you have to pay us for this period of your strike. And I think one of them, somebody on your program, one of you here, had also said, oh, policy of no work, no pay. So Tinubu has now graciously granted 4 months to ASU, and SANU will ask, of course, NASU will follow. Again, this has also brought some stability in the education sector. On agriculture, and that is one area that I think the president is being overburdened, and I must say he's doing well with the educational program. But the question a lot of us are also not asking, which I think ought to be asked, is that we are not calling the state governors out. Agriculture is not under exclusive list. In fact, if I had my way, it should be under a residual list. Federal government should only be concerned with policies, and more especially as it concerns even foreign, not the local food production. Here we hear Ibim Power. If Ibim Power, it is not Tinubu. It should be the state governor. And I break it down to very elementary arguments. Going back in time, what were the staple foods? Rice was not staple food in Nigeria. Ekitis, Ijeshas, the Igbos, Benue, the rest of them. Staple food was pounded yam. The pounded yam was cultivated in their land. In Yoruba land, you go to Ibadan and the rest of them, Amala from yam. It was cultivated there. There's even one brand of rice we call Ofada rice, which everybody wants to eat now. That means it was being cultivated somewhere in Ofada in Ogun State. And then there was Abakaliki rice. And across the country, we had every part, every locality that had something. They are staple foods. So rice is not a staple food. The question we then ask is, what has then happened to our staple foods? We acquired new tastes. Now, to come back with the crisis we have, we can no longer import rice. We can no longer import these new tastes. We have to go back to the things we produce. What does it take? The state governors. The legumes, tomatoes, onions, beans, and the rest of them is 3 months. Yam, 6 months. Cassava, 4 months. So you can have maize, sorghum, millet. All these things, they have just 3 months. We're not talking of cocoa here. But we're not talking of... No, let me make this point.
Yeah.
So if every state governor would do a little bit of what the Niger state governor is doing and say, Ogun state governor, let me cultivate. Look, travel from Ogere to Ibadan. I'll give you an example. Travel from Ogere to Ibadan. On your left, on your right, you see this wild plantain that produces no food. What does that tell me? It tells me that plantain and bananas can be cultivated there, but it is just wild. These are ungoverned lands. Go to Shagamu from Benin, wild forest left and side. Even Lagos to Ibadan, what we see springing up are churches, where we should be having farms. What are the governors doing to say, let every governor Just invest a little in agric, feed its people locally, not wait for the federal government. So in that area again, I would say the federal government, but unfortunately the burden, our people all look only in the direction of the villa, Abuja. They are not asking questions of their governors. They are not asking questions of their local government. Chamberlain, as growing up child, as I was growing up, one of the basic things we knew we had to do growing up was cultivate our own little farm. Even we cultivated beans and things like that, even in cans, in cups. Some of us were breeding fishes in bottles, mini aquarium. We had birds. In some cases, you had chicken that lay eggs, and then the eggs hatch, and you tend to them. That is agriculture. So it is cultural to us. So for me, the federal government has done its bit in agric, but we have no reason to say Nigerians are hungry. If Nigerians are hungry, responsibility is on the subnationals.
You know, the
Niger state government, as of today, they say has acquired about 1,000 tractors and is clearing land, especially in the stronghold of the bandits. Like I tell you, they say they kidnap and hide in the bushes and in the forest. What is a bush? Ungoverned land. If you plant legumes 1 kilometer this way, 1 kilometer this way, and there are tomatoes, ewedu, all this height, there's nowhere for any kidnapper to hide. It also affects security.
There are several components to the issue you raised about the governors. And I know we've raised several times.
No, the subnationals, I say.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way to the local government.
Because, I mean, that was part of the reason why we were talking about what Professor Bathanaji is doing in Abia State. If other states will latch onto that, because he says actually it should take 3 years. So no governor will have any excuse if they wanted to do that. There's no excuse why they can't do it. But when you say agri left to you, you think residual list may not be a bad idea. So is this something that you may suggest to the president to see how do we ensure that we get a lot more states?
Absolutely. I'm sure if the president is not watching me, some of his men will be watching me. And if I have the opportunity, these are the things I would suggest to him. Mr. President, call your governors. Call them out. Look, let the governors not just dance to Abuja and dance back continuously. We sit down, we talk about insecurity. Food security is huge. Food security. A few days ago, some bandits, because that's what I call them, is criminality, were said to have looted a warehouse. I mean, what they take from there is not what they want to eat, it's what they are going to resell. They are what they are, bandits. It's criminality. There's no excuse. The average Nigerian has no reason not to be food secured. And that responsibility is on the subnationals. If we take that, I mean, they say there are 3 basic needs of man: housing, food, and what's the third one now? Clothing. If we take that out, the rest, and that is easy if the subnationals are doing their bit. Niger State Governor, they say 1,000 tractors he has bought. Look, have you wondered that these days our unskilled labor, unskilled, does not want to do unskilled work? Nobody wants to work. It's a sense of entitlement. Everybody is looking for government is not doing, government is not doing. What are you doing for yourself? The person who says the government is not doing is also not paying taxes. And where he pays is not paying commensurate. I may also be guilty. We are all guilty. You understand? You know, the cost of living is high. Go look. The person who says he's hungry comes to you, and it's amazing. And sometimes you are driving in traffic, you see people on the streets begging. You give that man 500 naira, and the next thing is he buys a bottle of Coke and Gala. And then the man says, the next thing he says, I am hungry, and he doesn't want to work. So a lot of the time, our excesses, we need to change our taste. We need to change lifestyle. The bars are still very full. Our parties are not stopping. We are still investing in Ashwebi as usual.
I'm still listening. I'm listening. I've listened, to a lot of things that you've said. You talked about how one of the things you can give to the president is his passion. Some people will say we wish passion could put food on the table.
Yes.
Could change things. But
that's why I've told you what could put food on the table.
Passion is not enough. On the part of the federal government, what people are also wondering is whether it has set that tone. The tone of communication, which it wants other, not just communication in terms of what it says, but also in terms of what it does. Whether it has set that tone for state governments to follow. Recently, we heard about the Oronsanye report, which the federal government is trying to implement. And I'm sure you must have seen cartoons of how people are perceiving the report. They think, oh, you want to cut down the size of government in general, but the president's cabinet is still so big. We've not heard how government intends to use more local products in terms of how it runs its own government. For instance, local vehicles assembled in Nigeria, giving priority to whatever is locally produced over that which is imported. So while it is good that everybody should look inwards, and we can also talk about what the states are doing, they're wondering whether there's been enough signaling from the federal government in terms of how it is running its own affairs to be able to show examples to the subnationals.
Yes. Look, I think let's take the subnationals out. And you see, the subnationals, that's why what they are, subnationals. They are semi-autonomous. They are not submissive or reporting to the federal government. We'll rather talk about the people. And like you said, the government has said, oh, tighten your belts, if I could use those words as it was used in the past, make sacrifices and all of that. And whether the federal government itself is making the sacrifice, and then we talked about the Oronsanye report. But let me start with the Oronsanye report. That is a report that had been out there for 11 years. So yes, 11 or so, or 13. Some have said it's obsolete. I think my brother Silk, Femi Falana, said it is obsolete. I would almost agree with him. But this is perhaps the only president who has taken a bold decision. I've read that report about 3-4 times since that decision was made. I read it, I think I still read it a few days ago. I just keep looking at it, going back to it, forward and backwards and all of that. And I could see that even those who commissioned the Oronsanye report rejected as much as 70% or 60% of his recommendation. But if we can implement that 40%, as obsolete as we think it is, I'm sure it would, if it had been implemented at the time it was done, and the 40% that had been accepted had been implemented, maybe we would have cut down by 40%. But at least we can still rescue some 10-20%.
That's for the Oronsanye report. For the president's cabinet.
The president's cabinet of 45 ministers. Unfortunately, rather than look at the president, let us look at our constitution, which unfortunately I've said, you must have a minister from every state. You must.
What's unfortunate about that?
No, just hang on a minute. The president during his campaign kept saying a government of national competence was what he was going to form. He said government of national competence. Of course, when he was saying that, I'm sure perhaps he did not avert himself to the constitutional provision, which says you must have minimum of 37 ministers. It's non-negotiable. 37. Then, of the 37, there are also provisions for more on zonal level. 6. You are already 42. Which ordinarily one would say is huge. But again, I know we tend to make comparison with some other countries, especially the United States, and say, oh, there are 13 secretaries or 12 secretaries and all of that. In the United States, they don't have anything called federal character. In the United States, they have not said you must speak from every state. They did not say you must speak from every state. They did not say there must be some religious balance. It did not say all of that. It just says, if I give you the discretion.
Are you blaming the Constitution?
No, wait, just hang on. No, I must blame the Constitution. If I had my way, that thing, the federal character, quota and all of that, it is what, if the Constitution says you must have 36, how could the president go less and not be said to have committed some impeachable offenses? So he cannot go less than that. He cannot.
But he can stay at 37.
So the Constitution first. But again, we also have to look at the complexities of our country. America doesn't have the kind of insecurity problem we have. It doesn't have the entitlement mentality of our country. It doesn't have the complexity of religion. It doesn't have the complexity of gender. It doesn't have the complexity of ethnicity. Here you are dealing with 250 ethnic groups. There are 19 more Christians than Muslims, more Muslims than Christians. Those are the kind of arguments we have. Only this morning, while I was sitting down waiting to come on this program, I was reading somewhere where a group was saying because they want to take some simulation equipment and fire equipment from the aviation school in Zaria to Lagos, that they are trying to deplete the North. We also saw the controversy that followed, transferring 2, 3, 4 departments of 27 in CBN, especially on banking supervision, where the banks are situated, and you say you are trying to take CBN. Same thing when FAN, which has 70% of its operation, brought its headquarters to Abuja, and they are saying, return it to Lagos where you are operational. But we also remember that where the Ministry of Defense is presently situated was built by the Nigerian Ports Authority. It was meant to be the headquarters. And President Bazoum said, no, we are the ports in Abuja. Go back to where you are most relevant. And they went back to their head office in Marina, just across from the busiest ports in Nigeria. Right? But here we are, forgetting that even where we call the Federal Capital Territory is neither south nor north. It's a federal territory. But a senator of the Federal Republic came on there and started this controversy. Those are the complexities of my country.
Member of your party.
Those are the complexities. A member of my party.
A member of your party.
Yes.
Just before we quickly go to Ayo, another issue, and maybe Ayo can also expand on this, is the issue of transparency, which is something, I mean, you have talked about how you don't want to blame the past administration because the president has inherited both assets and liabilities.
Yes.
However, people believe that if we had been dealt with more transparency, we would not have been where we are. The country would have been abreast of what was going on, and this is where we are right now. Even as of now, there's still no clarity with, excuse me, the issue of subsidy removal, for instance. Only yesterday, Mr. Femi Falana was said to have issued a statement asking the federal government to be clear on what exactly it is doing with subsidy. Has it been reinstated? 1 trillion naira per month is what we hear, and there's been no rebuttal. What has greeted us is silence. The president has gone out to tell investors, if anybody asks you to offer a bribe, reach me directly, etc. But how many Nigerians can reach the president directly with issues when issues of transparency are concerned? So would you say that even in that regard, there's been sufficient signaling with transparency in this administration?
You see, the transparency, like anywhere in the world, anywhere, there are structures put in place for every citizen who wants to know what is happening in government. One of which is the FOI Act. Look, people will say, oh, the government. Yes, we have come from a military government. Most of the top echelon of the service are people who were recruited in the military era. Many of us still even have a military mentality. For the average person of my size, of my age, the 60s and above, we've lived we've seen more of military rule in our lives than civil rule. More of military. So a lot of us grew up to become adults up to maybe our late 20s and early 30s, knowing the military as way to go. Now we are back to civil rule, which is only just 25 years in our 60-year history. So our people also, because look, the Constitution has provided processes and procedure on how the executive should account, the judiciary should account, and even the legislature itself should account. How many of us are calling out? Are we asking questions? And when you say when people speak, of course, the president cannot hear everything. He has aides. Sometimes, I give you an instance. There was a day I was privileged to just have been in his presence. And there was something that was breaking. And I mentioned it and he was like, ha. I said, yes, sir. So he looked at the TV, said, you know, I've been at meetings all day and all that. He looked at the TV and it was streaming. And right there and then, I saw him take action. Right there on the spot. So we, the citizens, if we see something, say something.
But then that's one of the reasons. My apologies, Mr. Gala.
The federal government.
So just 1 second, Mr. Gala, if you can hear me. Perhaps see something, say something is the reason we have this. One member of your party also calling the president out for one thing or the other. I'm sure that information will come on screen shortly. But if you can just quickly take this one thing. I'm sure you've mentioned the fact that the Constitution has a responsibility and all of that. And generally we talk about government. This might be a philosophical question of sorts, but I think it begs the question, really. When we say government, so who are we talking about? Or what section of Nigeria are we talking about? When we say government should do this or government should do that, an elected official has maximum 8 years, be it as president or governor. An appointed official has maximum 10 years if it is statutory. But civil servants can be there for decades. So when we talk about government, who are we talking about?
Max. You and I are government. There's no individual called government. The totality of us is government. I mean, what we just have that we call those who run the government. They run it, but be it in the executive, judiciary, and the legislative arm. But there's no individual. President Tinubu is not government.
So, but then when we call out government, when we say that the government should do this and government should do that, are you sure that Nigerians get that information that we are government, or that when we say government should do this, we're actually calling out the people who are running the government? But then you also know that some have terminal times, and some their terminal time is much longer.
Yes. Look, when you hold an office, the terminal time or the tenure is immaterial. You know you have a responsibility. Even if it's your tenure is for 1 week, even if you are ad hoc, it's a responsibility. And if they say, okay, in Sogala you are appointed as A, you are going to be in office for 3 months. I already have my mandate of what I'm expected to do in 3 months. I have my mandate if it's for 1 month. I have my terms of reference. So it's no excuse. Nobody can give me the excuse that the time is not enough. Do your bit, leave the rest. No government anywhere, no president, no office holder can ever do it all.
Perhaps, and that also begs the question, just a second.
We'll take it on from there.
Something that you said, the reference you made to the United States of America, you talked about the complexities that they don't have, complexity of ethnicity and all of that. Of course, some people will argue with you on that one. However, the United States of America has one simplicity, the simplicity of nationhood, the simplicity of unity. Everyone, any American, wherever you meet, they don't tell you, I'm from this place, I'm from that place. So who should do the job? Just a second, sir. Just a second. Who should do the job of simplifying that for Nigeria so that we can have an ownership in Nigeria and not of any ethnic or religious or political sentiments?
You see, it has always been my belief, and I'm happy and I feel good that you raised this. In 2007, we were attending the BAC conference in Singapore, far back in 2007. And one had the privilege of sitting with Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew, when he became the president or the leader of Singapore, they also had the kind of complexities we had. And he said to us, their first task was making Singaporeans out of Singaporeans. That people were Singaporeans in name and not Singaporeans in orientation. They had Caucasians, they had the Malays, they had Indians, they had Mandarins. Even among the Mandarins, there were Chinese, and among the Chinese, I mean, the Indians, they had the Sikhs, all manner. They had to weave them together to foster themselves as Singapore. That is why we see the American who says America first, which was Trump campaign mantra, as it were. America, let's take back our country. In Nigeria, unfortunately, we've not had that. In fact, I will tell you for free, and it's my conviction, that part of what has held this country down is the twin ethnicity and religion. We are very religious people, but unfortunately, maybe not too godly. Those two things have held us together. And those, as I said, they are the complexities. So it is the responsibility of the government to change the orientation of the people. I agree with you absolutely. It is the responsibility of those we have entrusted with governance.
Okay, so
lately, I must say, and
just one more thing before you go.
If I permit me to just say this, I've been seeing some releases, statements, and
we're coming to that part, one of those statements
of the National Orientation Agency. We remember Mamsa, what he did. Andrew, check out. So it's for us to also, even if our leaders are not giving us the ownership, we must also make a conscious effort to want to take ownership.
Let's wind down with this.
This country belongs to all of us.
We've got less than 2 minutes, but speak to this. I know you must have also read it. A former member of your party. No, he's still a member of your party.
Who is that?
He's a former national vice chairman, Northwest. Look at what he said.
Oh, my friend, Saliu Lukman.
He's accusing the president of running government of exclusion like a dictator. He says the crucial issue is, having taken responsibility, how long will it take to get to the end of the tunnel?
Yes.
When will the expected light begin to shine?
Yes.
Without any hesitation, one can argue, at the rate we're going, our party, APC, and our leaders have shortchanged Nigerians.
Yes. His opinion. It is his opinion.
It's not a fact.
I mean, how can his opinion be my own fact? It is his opinion. Saliu is my very good friend. Saliu is my very good friend. He once also even called me an incompetent lawyer. One day I was at his book launch, and I said, Saliu, I was representing President Tinubu there when I was to speak. I said, well, Saliu, this is that incompetent lawyer who was APC legal advisor, who is now here to do a presentation of your book. So it is his opinion. Honestly, I don't.
So are you?
I don't agree with him
entirely.
I don't agree with him when he says we have shortchanged Nigeria. But the critical questions he has asked, they are valid questions. We need to know there is light at the end of the tunnel. Nigerians want to know, where is that tunnel? How long is that tunnel? I mean, if you say end of the tunnel, is it a 1 kilometer tunnel? 100 meters tunnel? What is it? How long is it going to take us to get there? And that is what the president kept saying. There is light at the end of the tunnel. These are steps we are taking to get there. I mean, he's giving assurances. One thing I give to this president is he takes responsibility. He doesn't shy away. He has said the buck stops with me, not once, not twice. Even in Qatar, some have said, oh, why should you say if anybody demands or tries to frustrate? Because his full speech was in context. That, demands bribe. Look, truly and rightly, not rightly, truly and really, we know there's this perception of Nigeria.
And we need to address it.
Do we run away from the reality? And the president is saying, before you accuse us, and perhaps this has even happened in the bilateral discussions. Because this was at discussions, and somebody had insinuated it. You remember when the British PM once said, Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. And thank God the Archbishop of Kajumbury was there to quickly address it. But the president must not leave such, if I was the president, and somebody has said that I will not leave it unanswered before I go out of that. I won't go back. So if he had said that if anybody, it shows commitment. It shows accepting our reality.
Yeah, and that's
commitment to changing the narrative.
All right, well, I have to thank you for coming on. Mr. Babatunde Ogala is a senior advocate of Nigeria, member, board of trustees, APC Professionals Forum, the president's lawyer. Thank you for coming on this morning.
No, I'm not the president's lawyer. I only happen to have been part of his legal team.
But I thought that's what you said at the beginning, that you know I was president's lawyer, which you know. I was just quoting you.
I was one of his counsel.
Okay,
in his election petition.
Okay, internalize that the way you want.
The president's lawyer is the Attorney General of the Federation.
Well,
and
that's...
Bola Tinubu is, as an individual, is
on official basis, but we know what happens. Okay, so it's business time, and Laddie Williams is on standby for that one. Hello, Laddie.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, it's another trading week right here in Lagos, Nigeria, and definitely we're going to be getting the top stories that set your agenda. Good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you might be watching from. Let's start with the oil markets. Now, we see amidst ongoing geopolitical tensions in Europe and the Middle East, OPEC Plus nations led by Saudi Arabia and Russia have opted to extend their recent voluntary oil production cuts for another 3 months. According to reports, the Saudi kingdom will prolong its voluntary reduction of 1 million barrels per day for the next 3 months, a measure that has been in effect since July 2023. This extension comes on top of 500,000 barrels daily production cuts agreed upon in April 2023. Each member of the OPEC Plus alliance has independently announced its reduction plans. The Russian deputy prime minister disclosed that Russia's coordination with certain OPEC Plus nations intends to decrease its oil production and exports by an additional 471,000 barrels per day for the second quarters of 2024. All right, let's see the impact of that now. We'll see the impact on prices. We see Brent crude futures climbed there about 14 cents, $83.69 a barrel, up 0.2%. We're seeing bullish sentiment with cuts. You know what cuts does to oil prices at this time. WTI crude, the cheaper grade, $79.99 a barrel this morning, also up 0.2%. So we see this market as following each other now, talking about these two grades of oil. And definitely we'll see the impact this week going forward. Let's check the grains market now. Chicago soybean futures extended gains. That was today, after last week's 3-year lows, but plentiful supply from South America and weak U.S. exports. That limited the gains that we see. Wheat, those up 0.6%, $5.61 for a quarter of a bushel. Soybeans is also up 0.6%, following wheat there at $11.58 a bushel, while corn, that's up 0.7% at $4.27 for half a bushel. So we're seeing volatility also in the grains market this time, with wheat WV1 following leading gains right there in the grains market. And we know it's the same issues, some of the same narrative, you know, we're seeing play out in the oil market. That's also playing out in the grains market. Shipments, a big issue at this time. All right, let's go to other stories now. Over the weekend, telecom operators took action. They're deactivating no fewer than 40 million telephone lines. This drastic measure was prompted by the Nigerian Communications Commission's mandate, which required telecom consumers to link their subscriber identity models, SIMs, with their national identity numbers by the deadline of 28th of February, 2024. This staggering figure marks a significant escalation from the initial plan, which aimed to deactivate about 12 million telephone lines in accordance with the NCC directive. The NCC had issued a notice December 2023, setting the deadline for telcos to bar SIM cards that were not linked to their owners' NINs by the end of February 2024. In a firm stance, the Director of Public Affairs of the NCC has reiterated that there will be no extension of the deadline. Telcos failing to comply with the directive risk facing severe sanctions. So I think I need to go and check my lines at this point. I know I've linked before, but I hope the link still stands at this time. Let's get some company news now. See, Landmark Corporate Realty has unveiled its latest luxury homes, the Queen's Garden Annex, located in the heart of Isheri North, Lagos State. The opening of houses at the Queen's Garden Annex marks yet another milestone for the real estate company. The company says it is a testament of its unwavering dedication to providing quality housing solutions that exceed expectations of its clients. Take a listen.
In a celebration of innovation, Landmark Corporate Realty Limited unveils the Queen's Garden Annex, setting a new standard of luxury in Nigeria's real estate. It's a momentous occasion filled with pride and anticipation as the Queen's Garden Annex is officially opened. Nestled in the heart of Isheri North, Lagos State, this enclave of elegance offers more than just homes. It provides an oasis of tranquility and sophistication with top-notch recreational facilities.
It's about over 210 units. In fact, we completed that in 18 months. And the purpose why we did this is because of the challenge a lot of people face with accommodation currently in our environment today. And so we decided to come up with beautiful, affordable units that is mixed with luxury and is mixed with recreational comfort that people can enjoy and have their family happy to come home to something that they can call a home.
Landmark Corporate Realty Limited says it is dedicated to providing quality housing solutions.
In terms of quality, everything we are putting here represents nothing but quality, and we passed.
One of the hallmarks of Landmark Corporate Realty Limited is its impressive portfolio of estates in strategic locations across Nigeria.
We have the Avocado Apartments in Abuja. We have the Paragon in Abramade Soya. We have the Lagoon Front. We also have the Lake View in Ekpe, right? We have in Kashi, we have in Kuje in Abuja. And the amazing thing about Landmark is that we have a flexible payment plan for everybody from 1 to 24 months. Yeah, so yeah, you can key in. We have a lot of projects coming on, and you just have to stay tuned and keep your fingers crossed.
And the keys to some of the luxury homes are handed to proud homeowners.
I'm very happy. Thank you very much. I'm very happy. And I can't wait to move my family down, from UK to come and spend time in a good, quality home.
With focus on innovation, quality, and customer satisfaction, the company says it is poised to continue shaping the future of real estate in Nigeria for years to come.
And the battle to rein inflation and stabilize the FX market has led to a jumbo rate hike and jump in the cash reserve ratio for banks. But how can the real sector be protected in times of rate hikes? Is it even possible to do that, at this point? Joining me now is Professor Segun Ajibola, Professor of Economics at Babcock University and the past president, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Great to have you on the show, Professor.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's the start of a fresh new week, and definitely right now, everyone wants to know the way forward. And we've seen the rate hikes at this time. It's been a long time coming. And this one, the last MPC meeting, was the biggest one we've seen, so far, 400 basis points. So at the end of the day, it begs the question, is it possible to tame inflation, with Nigeria's case, without the risk of tanking the economy?
It's possible to tame inflation, but the right course must be taken.
Right.
There are 3 things that must follow themselves in quick succession. Our economy, as of today, what's the problem? Have we properly diagnosed the problem? So there's the issue of diagnosis. Then, are we prescribed appropriate policies, strategies, initiatives to change the course of the economy as of today? We should put this in perspectives. Then we now ask ourselves, what is the way forward? If we look at what is happening as of today, we look at inflation, we look at the overall economy. I am not too sure if we are following the right track in taming this monster called inflation. If we look at the monetary authorities, let's single out the two most significant variables that have been attacked in recent past. First is the question of cash reserve ratio. Second is the question of monetary policy rate. Let's look at the cash reserve ratio. We must admit that the central bank is carrying out its statutory function of being bankers' bank. So, as you and me patronize our banks, commercial banks also patronize central bank. That's one. Two, we must also appreciate the fact that the monetary authority struggles to look at the quantum of money in circulation, that is money supply. Is money supply excessive? If it's excessive, elementary definition.
Over 70 trillion, at the last count.
78, between 78 and 80 trillion as of today. But the cash component of it is just a little over 3 trillion. So if it's too much in circulation, then the elementary definition of inflation, too much money in the economy, in the system, chasing fewer goods, will apply. I'm coming back to that. So when we now look at the cash reserve ratio, I'm taking that first, moving from just 32.5% to 45%.
That's the highest we've ever seen.
The highest we've ever seen. The immediate implication is this. With every 100 naira deposit coming to a bank, 45 naira goes to central bank as reserve. And that means central bank is still playing its statutory role of being lender of last resort. In case there is any problem, liquidity problem, a bank is facing, you run back to that reserve to solve that temporary problem. But the first implication is that you are left with 55 naira out of every 100 naira. You must apply that 55 naira first to cover the cost of mobilizing 100 naira. So, which means at any point in time, you look back, how much has it cost you to mobilize 100 naira?
And as a business, definitely I might need a loan to run some of my day-to-day expenses. So if I go to the bank, there's a huge chance that I might not get any credit.
So if you now have to cover all your expenses with 55 naira out of every 100 naira to conduct business, you can imagine the implication of that on the lending rate.
So we're seeing lending rates really high at this time, but at the end of the day, the banks will not even have enough to lend out at this time.
Exactly. So you see the rate jumping up because of the implication of applying 55 naira to generate enough business to pay for 100 naira. So that's the first implication. Now, it's the same thing for the monetary policy rate, moving by 400 basis points from 18.75 to 22.75. So the implication of both is that rates in the system will go up. Treasury bill rate has given the lead.
Which is good for the fixed income traders at this point.
Which is 19% per annum. Now, when you look at TB rate, perhaps the safest form of investment in our environment as of today, going for 19%, then you ask yourself, you and me, whatever we have that is excess liquidity in our hand, and we go back to our bank now, how much do we want to collect in terms of a deposit rate? Definitely it will be much, much higher than what it used to be. The monetary policy rate, which is often referred to as reference rate, used to be totally disconnected from other rates at the time, 2 years back, when the monetary policy rate was about 17% thereabout. Treasury rate was running at 6-7%. So deposit rate 5% and so on and so forth. But I think what the monetary authorities try to do now is to move those rates closer. By so doing, if treasury rate is going for 19-20%, imagine what deposit rates will go for.
All right, Prof. But
at the end of the day, lending rate will definitely jump maybe to about 30-something%.
Right.
Then we start asking ourselves the question, how many sectors of the national economy can bear that rate?
And definitely,
and still business.
And Prof, at this point, we're seeing every industry, complaining right now, from poultry, to gas and all of that. And they definitely are squeezed at this time. We're already seeing some results already coming out at this time with FX losses, all over the place. But talk to me now, how can this be balanced? Because it looks like it's a serious balancing act that has to be done at this time. How do we still tame inflation and find a way to protect the real sector, so that the real sector can still get some of funds and we can get production at the end of the day? Because we still have to solve the FX issue at this time.
In fact, my major concern is, are we even fighting the right battle? Using monetary policy instruments to fight inflation in Nigeria today? Opinions may differ, but personally I have my doubts. Because you tackle inflation using monetary instruments if you are sure that the kind of inflation that you have in your environment is demand pull. It's because people have excess money to throw about on things here and there.
Right.
Then let's mop up. Is that our problem? Because monetary authorities keep talking about 23 trillion naira that was printed and that has raised money supply in the system. Where is that 23 trillion naira? Is that money within this economy? I don't have an answer. But if 23 trillion naira has been printed, converted to another currency, taken out of the system, then it means we are fighting a wrong battle.
Right, so
because the money we are trying to mop up,
this time?
It's not here.
So what's the way to fight this battle?
So then we use combination of instruments. For example, I believe that our problem is more of cost push, not demand pull. To an average business person in this environment today, cost of everything that is produced is commodities, goods and services.
Right.
The average cost has gone up. Either for it, some of the costs are derived costs. And let me give an example. If I'm selling yam, if I'm producing yam, I'm cultivating yam, somebody will say, why is the price of yam so high? After all, it's not importing yam.
Right.
But the cost of producing a tuber of yam is derived cost. I have to buy so many things that are imported.
Right.
A cutlass as a farmer, one cutlass that I used to buy 3 years back at less than 1,000 naira is 4,500 naira today. I need that in my farm.
So definitely we have to solve the input costs.
Herbicides.
Right.
That used to be 1,300 per bottle is today going to 5,000.
Right.
I need all this, a combination of this, to work in my farm, to bring out yam to the market. So somebody will say, yam is not imported. What of the inputs?
The inputs.
To produce yam.
All right.
Ditto for all other products.
Right.
Then even those ones that we import, exchange rate has translated into higher cost, landing cost, per unit cost. So at the end of the day, going to the market, you see increases in all these commodities.
And you need,
what can we do
to
battle that side?
Right.
Rather than mopping up.
So, Prof, so much to unpack there, but it's just that we've run out of time, at this time. But we'll definitely, continue the conversation. Thank you so much. We're hoping for some kind of soft landing at some point, even though we know everyone's expecting a hard landing with what's going on. Professor Segun Majibola, Professor of Economics at Babcock University and past President, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. It was great having you today, sir. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
So that was the conversation right there. But it's another trading week, definitely. And yeah, it's a first listing of 2024 on the NGX, talking about Transcore Power. It's set to list its 7.5 billion ordinary shares of 50 kobo by introduction on the Nigerian exchange. Let's get a sense of what to expect. Now, joining us for this conversation is Agiye Akpata, Chairman, Skymark Partners. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
Good morning. So we see Transcore Power PLC is being listed at a market capitalization of about 1.8 trillion naira. What's the significance of this in the Nigerian market, and why is it the more valued, than the parent company?
Well, I think the significance of the market is, every new listing is very positive, particularly very large listings like this. And so it definitely is a positive development in terms of the depth of the market. In terms of the question you were asking about how the sub can be worth more than the parent, it's a classic problem of conglomerates, where conglomerates have a bit of a discount when you combine the value of the businesses in them. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's been listed, because this business has been inside the company for a while, but not properly valued. So now you can see the value of the company. Of course, bear in mind that the subsidiary is not 100% subsidiary, it's 51%. So in reality, the parent company's ownership in there is 51% of 1.8 trillion, which is about 900 billion, at least at the beginning of trading today.
And, definitely, we're talking about moving from a consumer nation to a producer nation, and definitely you need power, to make that happen. So how do you see the power sector evolving, with this listing of a second power generation company in the Nigerian market?
Well, I think it's a big positive. The first listing was about 2 years ago, Akeredolu Power. This is the second one, and it does confirm that there is the appetite in the market for these kind of companies. But more importantly, it does show that the privatization process is coming full circle with those companies now going public. We probably would expect more generation companies to list in the future. It might take a while for the distribution companies to get listed because they have a lot more problems with collections and their ownership structure is not as clean as the generation companies. For generation companies, their primary customer is Nigerian bulk electricity trader, which is federal government owned. So they don't really have counterparty risk like the discos. But I think it's definitely a very positive development for the market. And I think given the trajectory of Akeredolu Power, I think this is definitely going to be well received.
And definitely, at this time, Nigeria, we're all hoping at some point that we're going to have, be able to at least enjoy 24-hour power so that the industries can actually, produce at this time. But with all these listings we're seeing and liquidity, most of these companies coming to the market to get liquidity, is there a prospect that, at some point, we can actually enjoy more than 18 hours of power in a day? Is that a prospect?
Well, I think that's the upside these companies have. When you look at the installed capacity, for instance, Transcore Power, 972 megawatts compared to the existing listed one, which is half of that. When you look at the amount of money they are generating in revenues, it's a lot less than their capacity will suggest. So as the federal government tries to fix the bottlenecks in the power sector, these companies already have the capacity to dramatically produce a lot more. So once those bottlenecks are fixed, the production is there. It's just the last mile distribution and transmission. And as that transmission and distribution problem is fixed, the amount of power available will definitely go up from the grid. Cheapest power you can get is grid power. And the long-term goal is to have everybody get 24-hour power from the grid.
Right, definitely. That's the goal at the end of the day. Thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Ige Akpata, Chairman, Skymark Partners. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's get a quick check on some of the markets we track here. And definitely, if we look at the NGX last week, another negative close. That's for the NGX, down about 3.27%. Another big drop. And we see the equity cap there sitting at 54.035 trillion. Let's look at the volume and value now. We see that was all in the green, still signifying that there was a strong sell pressure in the market, strong activity right there. Deals 48,464, bigger than what we had in the previous week, and value sitting at 34.14 billion. That was the total number of stocks traded for the week. Let's look at the gainers now. We see Julie PLC again topped the gainers counter for the week with a big 60.26%. We also see PZ Cossins there, 27.36%. Sterling Financial Holdings, 14.94%. That's for the week. So definitely Julie has been doing pretty well back to back for about 2 weeks now. Let's look at the losers now for the week. We see MTN Nigeria. Yeah, that was a big drop there for the market, 18.91%. That was the close for the week, and a really big drop there. Suno Assurance Nigeria PLC, 1.71 kobo, 18.18% for the week. That was a big drop. So definitely we're expecting some kind of cherry picking this week after back-to-back losses on the NGX. Transnational Corporation PLC, United Bank for Africa PLC, those were the top trades for last week. And definitely we're getting first listing of 2024 today. Hopefully that's going to spur investor appetite, and maybe we can get a green close this week and maybe back above the 100,000 level for the all-share index. All right, so that's the show today, and that's how the markets are looking for last week, and that's the expectation for this week. And definitely it's a new month right now, March. Let's see if the bulls can take control of March. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team.
Let's have this next conversation with Dr. Tam George, Austin Tam George, as you've seen in the welcoming slide. He's former Commissioner for Information in Rivers State, and he's also an alumni of the Harvard Kennedy School. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Is that disturbing news that you heard? And I remember the last conversation we had was around communication.
Yeah.
Ensuring that we communicate with people in the right way so that we don't get certain kinds of reactions. The front page of some of the papers this morning talk about the looting of a warehouse in FCT belonging to the Agriculture Department of the territory, and some parts of the country also. It calls for the federal government to implement the right policies and all of that. Of course, there's also been several calls, including this morning from our guest during the first segment, Babatunde Ogala, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who is saying, look, we seem to be giving so much attention to calling out the federal government that we kind of ignore or excuse the state government from doing whatever is necessary. Concerning that looting of a warehouse and a number of other places like that in the country, what is your take, and what do you think the people are signaling as a result?
No, I think the message is clear. There's a food crisis in this country. We're in the middle of a very serious economic crisis, and we need specific policy directions, and we need results as soon as possible. Just as you said in our last discussion when I was last here, we discussed a lot about the role that, you know, state governments have to play. Sometimes we give disproportionate attention to what happens at the federal level, to sometimes neglect what happens in the states. And I believe that, you know, the state governors can do far much than, you know, much more than what they are doing now. For instance, you know, Nigeria has some of the best climate conditions in the world. We have some of the best soil patterns in the world. There is no reason why we shouldn't declare a state of emergency in the agricultural sector and get our people back to work. You know, a lot of our people are already doing agriculture, but at the subsistent level because of lack of funding. And now, if you mechanize the sector, you will see that there will be a great deal of commercial activity, a great deal of industrial activity happening in the agro sector. That is not going on at the state levels. Then there's also the problem of security. You know, you remember in the last administration, there was a lot of money given, running into billions of naira given to farmers under the Anchor Borrower Scheme. But, you know, at the point when these farmers went to the farms to cultivate, they were complaining a lot about security. A lot of them were being kidnapped, ransoms demanded. And so we've seen the interface now between security problems and agricultural products, you know, coming to the market. So we need to make sure that there is a great deal of focus on these twin issues of bringing about food sustainability around the larger question of improving security situation in the country. So this is a double whammy. A lot of people are concerned that even when we have workers, we have farmers who are willing to go to the farms, they are now complaining a lot that they are being kidnapped and they have no access to their farms. So we need to make sure that we deal with these issues about food sustainability and the crisis in the security sector.
Interestingly, part of the lot of people that, as you said, that are complaining about insecurity are governors themselves. Some governors are complaining about insecurity and saying, look, you know what, I need to talk to the president. And of course, we remember in the previous administration, the federal government, the president said he sent back a governor, go deal with your issues yourself. Now, a good number of people, as has been established, are saying the governors need to do more. But is it that they don't know what to do or what? We also know that there are federal legislators that represent states in the two chambers of the National Assembly. We also know from what has been confirmed to us again this morning that there are representatives of the states in the cabinet of Mr. President. According to Mr. Ogala, at least one minister per state and one minister per region. So is it that the communication they have, these federal representatives, to the states, is it that they don't get to the states? What exactly do you think is happening?
I think it's just a failure of leadership, Ayo, if we want to be honest about it. Let me give, because I have been in government, let me give you an instance, you know, where there is a massive failure. Every state government has what is called a security vote. It can run into billions of naira per annum. Billions of naira. And these are the same state governments.
Just a second. The state government, yes, each state governor
has what they call the security vote.
That runs into
billions of naira. Now, that is typically not accounted for. And so what you expect is that these state governors will use the money for the security votes, from the security votes, to invest in providing security. So what do? Typically, they just buy a few whistles or buttons, you know, for the police, and you don't really get proper accounting when it comes to those kind of funds. My own suggestion will be that, look, there are ways you can combat unemployment by diverting the money meant for security vote to create jobs. Because look, once you give people an alternative path to criminality, they will choose that path because they will say, look, I'm better off being gainfully employed. It could be support for entrepreneurs. It could be investment in healthcare. It could be, the money could be used for investment in education. These are alternative paths that people will readily choose in place of criminality. Now, if you ask the question about what happens to security votes in the states, that's a completely different conversation altogether. Now, the point is that we keep problematizing situations that we can easily resolved. And my sense is that if we follow the budgets, if we follow the money and say, look, invest in education, invest in agriculture, these are things that will, in the short and long term, provide gainful employment. But nobody is talking about that. All you see is that money is thrown at the problem, but there is no proper accounting in terms of how much exactly is used to create jobs, how much is used to create infrastructure, how much is used to actually create the situations that can combat insecurity. So we have these very complex economic problems across the country.
So you're saying that if the governors who collect security votes that runs into billions of naira dispense these resources rightly, we will not have any form of criminality?
Absolutely. In any case, on a sector-by-sector basis, every governor has funds. In terms of the fiscal year, they have funds for education, they have funds for agriculture, they have funds for all of these things. Now, you have very little oversight happening as far as the state assemblies are concerned, because constitutionally, as you know, the governors don't answer to the president, they don't answer to the National Assembly. They are answer to the people through the state assemblies. But what you see is that in typical cases, the state assemblies do not function to establish the checks and balances that should bring about good governance. So there's a complete failure of government. So what we are saying is that we need to completely rethink how we administer in a way that will deliver service and change the material conditions of our people. We have unemployment rates, that are baffling. We have inflation rates that are baffling. We have a major national crisis right now. And you don't get the sense that governors at all levels are responding with the sense of urgency that the situation requires.
I'm glad that you are a student and alumni of the Harvard School of Governance, so you want to help us understand something. So how does the security votes work? Where does it originate from? Does it originate from the federal government or from the state coffers? Because my apologies, I'm asking because we know, at least on paper, what the take home of a governor should be. So if the security votes is more than his take home, no wonder then a number of people will say why they would do anything to get into power.
The security votes are not necessarily money allocated to the governor for personal use. They are supposed to be emergency funds to respond to security situations, security crises in the state, in each state. Now, the governor can choose to do what he likes in terms of deploying that specific resource to stabilize security situations in their states. But you don't find transparency in the deployment of the resources. And these are the same governors who go about talking about security crisis, but you've got the resources to respond to these things. And my sense is that you respond to security problems not by simply buying guns and boats and the rest of that. You can actually create jobs. When you create jobs, people have no appetite. They don't have appetite for criminality. So the point I'm making is that we maybe need to completely rethink how we deploy state resources. Some people say Nigeria has no money. Look, I can tell you from my own experiences that Nigeria has resources. What we lack is transparency and wise deployment of public resources. So I think that the state governors, the federal government, they need to completely rethink how public resources are used and open the space so that people can see, the kind of transparency that exists in terms of the deployment of public resources.
I'm sure my colleagues will want to take you up on that security vote angle, but let's come back to the issue of the vandalization of those facilities in the various parts of the state. Case in point, at this time, the looting of a warehouse in FCT. One of the issues that Maupe raised this morning, highlighted, and of concern definitely, is that of the 7 people that were accosted by the police, 2 of them are security operatives themselves. So what does that say about anything to you?
Well, hunger, I'm not justifying criminality, but it just goes to show, it signalizes that when people are increasingly desperate for food, as I said, they will be drawn more and more towards criminality. We've seen situations like that, where people just invade warehouses and loot, the warehouses during the COVID-19 crisis, if you remember. But there was a connection between the lack of the government's ability and transparency in deploying these resources, these foods and other resources to the people, and simply, keeping them in these warehouses when there was actually a massive need for these resources out there. And so the people just resorted, to self-help. I think that, the fact that we had, allegedly we have, some security personnel amongst these people arrested, shows the degree of desperation that exists out there. It brings us to the question of what the government can do, because this is ultimately, this is just a symptom of a bigger problem. For instance, earlier last week, we got reports, headlines all over the country, that Nigeria is receiving 25,000 tons of grains, from Ukraine. And, I thought at first this was sarcasm, because why would a war-torn country like Ukraine be making humanitarian food donations to a country like Nigeria? So it shows you the degree of problems. Nigeria has some of the best weather conditions. We have some of the best soil conditions. We have the population to go in massively into agriculture and to make sure we bring food sustainability to our people. Why should we be receiving grains from a war-torn country like Ukraine? So these are massive indications that we have a serious economic crisis, but more importantly, we have a serious leadership crisis. We want to know what can be done to bring food sustainability to Nigerians, and I think that the government at all levels, have a responsibility to respond to the crisis.
Well, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that there is a lot of work for government. I mean, you mentioned it a little while ago. Now, we have been talking about agriculture for eons. I'm young enough to know that as far back as the second half of the 70s, the Obasanjo government at the time started talking about Operation Feed the Nation. The succeeding government converted it to what they called Green Revolution. And on and on and on until even this Fourth Republic, where from, on and off, we had a situation where one government or the other is talking about these things. So it is the federal government in most cases that is talking about, food initiatives, agricultural initiatives at the national level. But the federal government doesn't have land, except the FCT. It is the state governments that have the land. So do you see a disconnect in communication? Or do you see, what exactly do you think is responsible for us not achieving these things at a holistic level?
Yeah, but I just told you, this is a failure of government. It's a failure of government.
Yes, you said that.
The Land Use Act at the state levels, for instance, leaves the ownership of the land to the state government.
I get that.
Yes.
You said as well, and a number of people have said that the federal government needs to take the leadership in some cases. And I would say that is perhaps one of the things that the federal government is doing, taking leadership, taking initiative, and perhaps expecting that the states will also buy into it. So is there a gap in communication? Because they really do meet.
What the president, for instance, can do is to hold a meeting with the state governors and say, look, we may have our own policy here at the federal level, but it has to find resonance on the ground at the state level. After all, every state government, as far as I know, has a ministry for agriculture. In Rivers State, we have a ministry for agriculture, for instance. So every ministry of agriculture has a responsibility to domesticate a plan that can respond to the food crisis in each state. And the problem is this is not happening. And why is it not happening, Ayo? It is not happening because of an abject failure of leadership. There is no problem with the land. There is no problem with the climate. There is a problem with lack of vision in terms of responding to the challenges of food security. And I am just telling you, Ayo, that the state governors have a responsibility to respond to these things. And they are not responding to them.
The question is how? What is missing?
What is missing is clear...
Let me give you another idea about this. The AFDB is a multilateral organization that has been talking about this, what do you call it now? Some agricultural initiative, SAPZ they call it, so that the states will come up with these agro-industrial processing zones. specialized agro-industrial processing zones across the nation. And a number of states are already buying into it with the assurances of the federal government, because of course that that it has to be a G2G kind of thing. So what is missing in the conversation over the years? That's the question that I'm asking. Irrespective of who is in government, something needs to happen.
No, it cannot be irrespective of who is in government, because there's always a question of continuity. Let me give you an example that I know so well in my state, in Rivers State. Under the Amechi administration, for instance, there was a massive investment in what they call the Songhai farms. It was an industrial farming mechanism, that had the potential, of transforming the agricultural sector, making Rivers State not only food sufficient, but was building the capacity towards, food sustainability across the region. But what happened? As soon as Amechi left government, we came into government in 2015, and there was a complete abandonment of the sector. The Songhai farms, in fact, I understand recently, that Governor Fubara is beginning to is putting mechanisms in place to revamp agricultural sector. But that's because he's just come into government less than a year ago. But I'm telling you that as far as Rivers State is concerned, for 8 full years after the Amechi administration, the Songhai farms, the industrial fish farms, all of them completely abandoned. I'm saying this from experience because I was part of the government myself. So you can replicate this across the country in the states. So you may have a good administration, that had a vision and started actually to implement this. But as soon as that administration leaves, you can't guarantee that those kind of visions are going to continue. So in any case, in Rivers, it didn't continue. And I just put it to you, Ayo, that for 8 years, the agricultural sector was completely abandoned. And I mean, it's very gladdening that the new Fubara administration is now beginning to think of how they can revamp the agricultural sector. Now imagine if we have continuity across the country in terms of disproportionate emphasis in food production across the board. You are going to have a lot of these things. So the point is, we can't have a country of over 200 million people, and we are getting food aid from a country that is war-torn, only 37 million people in Ukraine.
Going by the
there's a
example,
problem.
my apologies, going by the example that you cited of Rivers State, of course, some people will also cite that in several other parts of the country. Do you see politics as an inhibition to our food production agenda?
Well, political actions are always influenced by the agreements or disagreements with predecessors and successors. But what I am talking about, it has to do basically with lack of continuity. I mean, if you have an administration that is focused on certain sectors and you can see the trajectories towards progress, and the administration leaves and there is lack of continuity, it's going to affect the development of the state. Let me give you one more example, because I followed that closely in Cross River State. You probably remember that when Donald Duke was governor, he completely transformed the tourist sector, in Cross River State. We knew about the Obudu cattle ranch. We knew about all kinds of the Tinapa investment resort. As soon as Donald Duke left government, over the years, we've not seen continuity. In fact, the other day I was looking at, what some investors were saying concerning that resort. The Obudu cattle ranch completely abandoned as soon as Donald Duke, left office. So the point I'm making is that, yes, we can talk a lot about, people winning elections, but you can win elections and governance is a completely different thing. So we don't have the quality of leadership that can actually bring development, on a sustainable basis, to our people. And this is the result that we are seeing.
All right, Chamberlain.
Yeah, morning, Dr. Sam, George. Just wondering, haven't seen the example of Professor Bathanaji's geometric integrated power project in Abia State, having a facility scalable to 188 megawatts. Thankfully, he says he's working on something else, which is about 1,000 thereabout. But do you see states, because we did ask him the question, why it took that long and what's the ideal time? And he says it's just 3 years. It can't happen in 3 years, meaning any government that really wants to approach that can achieve that in one term. So is there a chance from the way you see things playing out now, is it likely that we may see any state whatsoever wanting to latch onto that? And who knows, there might be just this bandwagon effect, because if we get it right in that power sector, I mean, there'll be no telling of what we can achieve if we sort that.
Okay, what we've seen so far in the specific case of Abia State regarding the presence of private investors in the power sector, shows what can happen when there is a good synergy between the public sector, that is government, and private investors on a sector-by-sector basis. But you see, this kind of synergy by themselves do not produce results for eternity. It has to continue. There has to be continuity. The drivers of that power project are alive now, and they seem to be working with the administration in Abia State. But what's the picture going to be like, when Governor Oti leaves office? What's the blueprint for power sustainability in Abia State? And now that the space has been opened, for investment in the power sector, especially at the state levels, how much of that kind of stimulus are we seeing across the states to achieve energy independence at the sub-regional level? So these are questions of leadership. These are questions of public policy. And it will be exciting to see on a state-by-state basis how the state governors are going to respond clearly to these challenges of development. I think that for each developmental challenge, there is an opportunity to move the needle in terms of providing good quality governance. My worry is that we may not have the quality of leadership, at the state level. Well, we are yet to see it. We are yet to see it. We need to make sure that state governors rise to the challenge of leadership. I believe that our constitution has, a lot of people talk about how we need to restructure, how we need to decentralize power from the federal government to the states. But I remember the song, in the 70s, now that you found love, what do you want to do with it? The same thing when they decentralize power, to the states, you've got the power. You have FAC allocation, you have all kinds of allocations, internally generated revenue. How much of developmental strides are we seeing in the states? I think that they are not proportionate in terms of how much the states are seeing. We need to see more. We need more leadership. And we need civil society to be strengthened so that questions can be asked beyond the political sphere concerning accountability and transparent use of public resources.
Well, I do not know how much time we have left, but I cannot resist asking you, knowing that you have been a professional in the private sector for many years, what exactly did you make of the federal government's attempt to now say that they want to, streamline government and implement the Oronsaye report?
The Oronsaye report, I think, was prepared in 2012. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed since then. More ministries have been created. So if you say you want to implement the Oronsaye report, that's probably a good thing at the theoretical level. But ultimately, the question has to be, how do we want to, generally discipline the use of public resources in a way that is accountable, in a way that is beneficial to the most amounts of people in Nigeria? For instance, Marco, let me give a single example of waste, in my opinion. Every state has a pilgrimage board. I believe that, pilgrims should go on religious tours and only get consular support wherever they go, whether it's to Israel or whether it's to Saudi Arabia. They can sponsor their own trips and then get consular support if they have any problems wherever they visit. But we have a massive waste, in my opinion, going on in that sector, where pilgrims are funded by governments across the country. That's a massive waste. I don't see how many Oronsaye reports are going to help that. So if you want to implement the Oronsaye report. Theoretically, that's fine. But then what about the various points of wastage, such as the ones I just mentioned? It takes a great deal of rethinking of our public institutions and how money is spent for us to be able to arrive at, spending money in a way that is responsible.
And some people will still docket it in the Department of political will. But anyway, let's close now. There are those who ask, first of all, in the River State, do you think that the feud, or alleged feud, if we can use that term, between the two governors, do you think it's over?
The governor, which of the governors?
Well, the governor, Fubara, and his predecessor.
No, but we can only have one governor at a time. Fubara.
Yes, but do you think the feud is over?
No, I think Fubara's focus is very clear. He's focusing on how you can revamp the state. I've been monitoring events very closely, and he has the massive support of the people. Governor Wike, who was my boss when I was commissioner, is now minister for Abuja. I think his focus should be in Abuja. And Fubara, has a clear mandate of the people to drive agenda. So he has the full support of the people to fulfill his promises.
Let's close to this one. You're from River State as well as late Herbert Wigwe. Our condolences again. How did you receive that news?
I was very shocked because I happened to be close to the family. His father, Shengo Wigwe, is a very good friend of mine. Herbert and I worked together when I was commissioner. We had the Rivers at 50 in 2017. I was commissioner for information. And during the committee work, Herbert was the chairman of the fundraising committee, I think. Okay. And we worked very closely. He had boundless energy, had passion, a very self-driven young man.
Absolutely.
So I really, condole the family. And I wish that he will find rest and his family.
We say amen with you. Austin Tam George, former commissioner for information in River State, as well as an alumni of the Harvard Kennedy School of Governance. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for inviting me.
Chairman, any messages from us?
Well, we'll have to wait until tomorrow, and apologies to everybody. But we do see them, and as always, we thank you all for letting us be a part of your day today. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Osov. Goodbye.
I'm wishing you a very productive week ahead. Thank you for watching. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Amaya Makinde. Have a productive and profitable day.